Hey everyone, I'm Captain Jack. Welcome back to the School of Applied Energistics 2. In March of 2015, over 7 years ago, we released a 4-part AE2 video series that collectively became our most watched series to date. Clocking in at over 2.2 million views, thousands of modded Minecraft players have relied on our series to give them all the knowledge needed to construct an intricate and efficient AE2 network. Now, in 2023, we've redone the entire series and included all the newest blocks and changes, so the next generation of Minecraft players have a current source of information to rely on. The new series is longer and contains even more detailed explanations of nearly every item in AE2, with real in-game applications included in each video to better teach you the mod. In episode 1, we'll be showing you how to set up your very first network. In episode 2, we'll be covering a massive range of blocks and items too numerous to mention here. This is the longest video by far, clocking in at over 40 minutes. While this may be too much for most people to digest in a single setting, I had trouble finding a reasonable spot to split the video, so for your convenience we've added timestamps in the description below so that you can easily jump to any part of the video that you need to. This will be true for each episode. In episode 3, we'll cover autocrafting. Episode 4, which is a little more recent, recorded 4 years ago on a different version of Minecraft, will make a reappearance in this series because the content really didn't change enough to warrant a whole new video. Here, you'll learn all about advanced networking and P2P tunnels, which are some of the most complex multiparts in AE2. Finally, in episode 5, we'll cover spatial storage. These videos are recorded on all the Mod 7, Minecraft version 1.18, but since so much changes for the early game in 1.19, I've included another video which explains the new Certus growth process and the automation of it. The link is in the description below. This series is a culmination of well over 50 hours worth of work between setup, recording, and editing, and we hope you appreciate the outcome. Enjoy the series. In episode 1, we ended with this network. It had only 8 channels, and that's all we could add onto it. But now we want to expand our network, and to do that, we're going to need a controller. The controller can pretty much be placed anywhere on your network, but you're going to have to be careful about what blocks you put next to it because they're going to take up channels. The controller itself is able to accept power, so it kind of acts as a double block, an energy acceptor and the hub of your network. Simply connect it to any source of power, and it's going to turn on and light up your network. If you right-click on the controller, you can see how many channels are in your network, how much stored power is in there, how much its max power is, and what it's using. You can also click on this button over here to change between the unit of measurement and power between RF and AE. Even though the ME controller is a single block, you can turn it into a multi-block by placing multiple other blocks around it. Each face of the controller has 32 accessible channels, and we'll learn how to manage those channels and access them in a little bit. There's 3 basic rules you want to follow when building your controller multi-block. First is that the length on any side can't be more than 7 blocks. Next, no more than 3 controller blocks can be touching each other at one time, and there's a 1 controller limit per network. This is just a quick example of how big a controller can actually be. The max size is 7 by 7 by 7, and the insides can be made up of whatever other blocks you want in any configuration you want, provided you're following the rules. If you want to expand your controller, you can easily see if you've added it correctly or not by whether or not it glows. If you break a rule, like having a single block touching more than 4, the entire structure breaks. If you add a second controller independent of the main one, everything breaks. And if you try to expand it beyond 7 blocks, everything breaks. Smaller networks are not going to use very much power. This one's only using 11 R per tick. So a little wind generator or maybe a solar panel will be fine at first to keep your network going, but you will need to be relying on outside power generation to keep your network online. If you want, you have the option of crafting an energy cell or a dense energy cell to increase the power buffer of your system. This one's only using 11.12 RF per tick, so it's going to take a very long time to burn through 3.62 million, but let's say you're running off solar and that's it, and you want your system to last overnight. Maybe adding some energy cells will make it so you can last through the night without having to worry about your system shutting down. Extra energy cells on your network are pretty much optional unless you want to start using spatial storage, in which case your network is going to need a lot more internal power. Now we're going to talk about cabling, and this is definitely the most important part of episode 2. You essentially have 5 different types of cable. You have your basic Fluix, you have your regular covered cable, then you have dense cable, which can hold 8 channels and 32 channels respectively, and then we have smart cable, Fluix, and dense cable, Fluix. Just like the regular covered counterpart, the smart cabling can hold 8 channels, and the dense smart cable can hold 32 channels. As you can see, they also come in a lot of different colors, but what's important to note here is that your regular smart cable will connect to any color of the other type of cable, and the colored cable will not connect to each other. This is going to be really important when you're networking in tight spaces and you don't want networks to touch each other, or you don't want different types of cabling touching each other. If you're not using smart cable, which I definitely would recommend doing as quickly as you possibly can, it's very difficult to know how many devices are on a certain channel. So you can see here my Fluix covered cable is not indicating how many interfaces are connected to it above. The advantage of the smart cable is that you can see exactly how many devices are on a channel by the colored lines that appear on it. You can see here the dark blue lines each represent one channel, the lighter purplish also represents one channel, and the black lines represent available channels to use. So we can tell by looking at this cable, there's 5 lines, so we have 5 devices attached to this cable. And you can see above, I have 5 interfaces. Different colored cables will have different color lines indicating channels. You can see here that the blue line, everything is taken up because I have 8 channels attached. If I go ahead and delete 2 of those, you see that now I have 2 black lines, which indicate available channels, and now I have 6. Dense cable, which is capable of carrying up to 32 channels, will also have lines on them, except each of these individual lines represent a total of 4 channels. In this setup here, I'm using 8, 16, 24, 32 interfaces, and you can tell by the lines on the bottom here that all 32 channels are going through here. 8 are being split off here, 8 are being split off here, 8 are being split off here, and 8 are being split off here. So even though this one is all filled up, dense cabling, which is capable of carrying 32, is indicating that there's 8 channels because 2 lines equals 4 channels. Down here I have another dense cable, and this one's indicating 2 lines, which means 8 channels, and that's going into this little cabling right here, which kind of is an automatic connector, which will tell us how many devices are on this side of it. So here we have a lot more potential to add more devices. So this is what I was talking about in episode 1, about getting way more channels than just 8 on your network. The larger your controller multi-block is, the more channels you'll have access to. You just want to make sure that your wires aren't crossing in ways that are conflicting and causing errors in your channels and devices to go offline. In episode 4, when I talk about P2P tunnels, there'll be a different way to access these channels onto a controller. But for an intermediate setup here, having different colored cable connected to different sides of the controller while not connecting is probably the easiest way to pipe channels throughout your base. It's also important to know that the devices on the very end of your cable are going to get the lowest priority when it comes to channels. So coming off this dense cable, we're capable of carrying 8 total channels, and right now we've used 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I add 5, 6, 7, 8, everything will be taken up. And the last one here, if I make it 9, we'll just say in the top left there that the device is missing the channel, even though the one right next to it is fine. Some things that you add to your network will not take up channels. For instance, a level emitter, an illuminated panel, or energy cells take up no channels at all. You can easily see if you've added a channel to your network by using smart cable. So if I go and put this down here, we have no blue lines here, add one, there you go. You can see that this now takes up a channel, and if I remove it, the channel disappears. Some blocks, when added to your network onto colored cabling, will take on the color of the cable that's behind it. So that's how I have a green one here and a magenta one here. Now that's pretty much it for cabling and channels, but I just want to make sure and emphasize that you understand how important this actually is, because adding one block in the wrong spot could potentially turn off a multitude of different machines for your network. So just be really careful how you lay things out, and I would advise to really plan out ahead before you start making a big network like this. Speaking of big networks, there's going to come a time when you want to take the items on your smaller cells and put them onto larger cells. The block we're going to use to do that is the MEIO port. So this is a really neat block, and what you're going to be able to do is you're going to take all the items from your cells and either put them on the drive or put them on a new cell. So in this example, I have 3 1K cells that are all completely full, and I've crafted a new 4K item storage cell that's completely empty. And I'm going to take all the items that are on these disks and put them onto here so I can salvage these for parts. So let's go ahead and take these out, and then we're going to put them on this side of the I/O port. Now right now, there's nothing happening, because I'm trying to take these disks, or the storage on them, and put them onto the drive. That's what this arrow indicator is for. But there's no disks on the drive. So I want to go ahead and shift click this in here, and you can see that immediately it's starting to load up these. Once it's done, it's going to kick them over to the other side, and you're going to see that our cells are emptied. You can also speed this machine up with acceleration cards, but we're going to talk about cards in a little bit. You can also take items from your drive and put them back in a card. So if we switch this arrow here by clicking this, put this 4K cell back into our drive, and then click these guys into here, they are going to all fill up, and this one's going to be empty. Once your 1K cells are empty, shift right click, get your parts back, and now you can use these to build another 4K cell. Next, we're going to talk about import and export buses, and these are pretty basic, so I'm really not going to spend too much time on this. What export buses do is they export the contents of your drives or disks out into another block. So this export bus can be set up to export stone, and the stone will come from your drive, through your pipe, and into the chest. And you can see that this is happening very slowly. Next, we have the import bus, and the import bus takes items from outside your network and pulls them into your network. So if I put some stone inside of this chest here, it's going to pull through here down into my network, and you can see that the stone is slowly filling up. For both the import and the export buses, you can add some cards, which again, we'll talk about what they all do in a second, but this will either make it so that these will speed up considerably by adding acceleration cards, or this block right here will act as a sort of whitelist. So right now I've whitelisted stone, so stone is the only thing that's going to be able to be imported into our system. You can see if I put grass blocks there, nothing's coming in. If I remove the filter by going in here and just right clicking, it's going to start importing grass into the system. You can also increase the variety of the items to get exported or imported by adding 2 capacity cards. One will increase it by 4, the second one will increase it by a full 8, and you'll be able to whitelist more items in here so that you can have a different variety of things going through one export bus or in through one import bus. Now, I know a lot of people out there use refined storage because it's a lot easier, but AE2 is a lot more powerful. You can see that in this setup here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 buses attached to one single block in the world, so you can make very compact machines. By comparison, using refined storage in the same setup, you can see that you have a much larger area of usage than AE2. You can see in this example here that I actually have 5 different items in one single block space. I have a crafting terminal, I have an import bus, I have a storage bus, I have a smart cable, and I have an export bus over here. Again, all in one block space, and this is amazing. While using AE2, you're definitely going to end up using cable anchors. Maybe some more than others, but these are really, really, really important. You're going to use these to prevent 2 different types of the same type of cable from connecting to each other. So normally, with the basic ME Fluix smart cable, if I put down another one next to it, everything is going to connect to each other. And if I have more than 8 channels over here, or 8 channels here, and 8 channels here, everything's going to break. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep things nice, neat, and tidy. So we're going to add on some cable anchors, put down our pipe, and it's not going to connect. But another great thing that you can do with cable anchors is make facades. All you need is 4 cable anchors surrounded by just about any type of block, and it will convert that block into 4 facades. Using these is super simple. Just place them right over top of your wires or devices, and it will hide them all nicely. You can also place them on different types of terminals and storage monitors to make a different graphic around it. If you want to be able to see through the facades that you made and kind of work around there, back there, take your networking tool, right click, and click Transparent Facades, and this will make it so that you can see everything behind them. Removing facades or devices or cable anchors or anything like that is really simple. Just shift right click with either the basic wrenches or a network tool on any of these blocks, and it will make them go away. They'll pop off and you can pick them up. Just like cable anchors, the Quartz Fiber is definitely going to be making an appearance on your network if you're doing things right. The red network over here has no power source, while the blue network has a power source coming up and through here and into the controller. What the Quartz Fiber doing is transferring energy only through this pipe. So if I disconnect this, now it's going to break, and now we've broken that rule with more than one controller on a single network. If I remove this and I add the Quartz Fiber there and add a piece of smart cable, now the power has once again been linked up, and power is coming from here, through the Quartz Fiber, and into this other network. One example of where this becomes extremely important is when you're using P2P tunnels, because the P2P tunnel network is its own mini network, and it needs to be supplied with power, and the Quartz Fiber is going to be the way that you're going to do that. Now we're going to talk about fluids. Fluids can be imported into your system using ME import buses with no modifications, while strapped to a tank or some sort of fluid storage unit, and also export it out of the system. If you want to export out of your system, it's a little bit trickier. Right click on your export bus and search for whatever fluid that you have in your system that you want to send out into a tank. In this case, mine is lava. What you're going to do is you're going to move over here to JEI or NEI and then click and hold whatever fluid, like it's got to look like this, can't be a bucket, whatever fluid you want to export. Click, hold, this will light up green, and you're going to put that right there. And then lava should be flowing out of there. But we do have a little bit of a problem. That's because when I built this tutorial, I used a different kind of lava in here, and it needs to be very specific. For that tank over there, I actually have lava from Security Craft, and it needs to be the exact same thing. So if I click, hold, and move this in here, into my ME export bus, now it's going to start taking lava from my disks and putting it into this Skystone tank. You can also bucket stuff straight into your terminal. Just right-click your bucket, drop it in there, right-click it, and it will empty the bucket. The same thing applies for your portable fluid cell. Just right-click it, take your water bucket, whatever fluid you want, right-click it, and in it goes. We'll talk about these in a lot more depth soon, but you can also take an Annihilation plane over some water, and it has to be a source block, and that will bring it right into your network. Next, we're going to cover a few more uses for the network tool, all of the various different cards you see behind me, and the cell workbench. Aside from being able to see through facades, the network tool has a couple other features. You can right-click anywhere in your network that's not the controller, and it will show the same stats as if you were right-clicking the controller with an empty hand. If you're not pointing at any blocks, you can also right-click with the network tool in your hand, and it has an option to add all of the different various cards into the network tool itself. This is a really useful inventory saver because while you have your network tool in your hand or even anywhere on your bar, you can have access to all these different cards while you're opening something that could use a card, and the inventory pops up right over here. The cell workbench is a block that will allow you to customize view cells and ME storage cells. The view cell is a cool block that will enable you to adjust the features or what you want to see or what you want to store on, let's say, a view cell or an ME item storage cell. And when you put a block in here, you get this option over here for compatible cards. And for every block that you can add a card to, it's going to have the name of the card that you can add, and it's going to have a little number in parentheses next to it, and that number just means how many cards of that type you can add per block. So the view cell can only have the fuzzy card or the inverter card, whereas the 1K storage cell can have 4 different ones in here. And the GUI here with all these different spaces is not inventory storage space. This is where you can whitelist, blacklist certain things depending on what you want to see or not see. Now, I could probably spend a whole video talking about these cards and trying to demonstrate every single possible use that you can use them for, but that'd probably take up a whole nother video. So I'm going to try to paint these cards with a really broad brush here, give you the generalized information. If you don't find what you're looking for here, you can always use the Googles. The first card we're going to talk about is the Overflow Destruction card, and that will basically destroy anything that is an overflow item. So let's say you have a quarry or something that's importing a lot of stuff into your system, and you want to destroy anything excess so it doesn't like fall over the ground or get stuff all backed up. You can go ahead and put that onto a storage cell inside of your network. So to attach the Overflow Destruction card into a storage cell, you're going to open up your cell workbench, you're going to put the card in here, and then you're going to specify what you want to be destroyed if there is any overflow. Take that out and then throw it in your drive. Now you can see there's no more space on this card, and if I go ahead and open my network here and shift click all of this stuff in here, you can see that it automatically gets deleted because I have that card in there. We've already mentioned the capacity card, but that will just increase the amount of items that you could specify either whitelisting or blacklisting through export buses and import buses. Some of these cards, when added into devices, will give you extra options here on the left side of the GUI. So if I go ahead and put this in here, it's now going to give me a redstone mode where I can choose to control this device with a redstone signal. This is also true for the crafting card, but we're actually going to talk about crafting cards in episode 3. So those are all the basic cards, which are made with gold processors, and now we're going to move on to the advanced cards over here. The first advanced card we'll talk about is the Equal Distribution card, and that will have to be attached to an item storage cell inside the cell workbench. Once you put it in here, you can see that when I mouse over, it will tell you which upgrades are installed on the cell. For this example, inside here, I have 4 64K cells, all with an Equal Distribution card upgrade in it. If I get this infinite source of blocks here and I put it in, you can see that it's actually going to slowly cycle through, so it's filling this one first. And then once it reaches a certain point, not exactly sure what that level is, it's going to go ahead and start filling other cards here. So I'm just going to take this out. Filling this one. Now it's moved. Now it's filling this one. And that's how the equal distribution card works. So again, I'm not sure what the threshold is, but it's going to divvy up the incoming items amongst all the cells instead of just filling up one cell at a time. The energy card is used in wireless terminals or portable cells to increase their power button. So if you open up a portable cell here and take this energy card and put it over here, you can see that it's going to hold now a lot more energy in that card, so it'll last a lot longer when you're out there in the wild. The acceleration card is super straightforward. It just makes stuff go faster through the blocks that you can apply it to. Now, the fuzzy bus is a little bit easier to just demonstrate than it is to try to explain it. Basically, when you put a fuzzy bus inside whatever, block that it can take a fuzzy bus, it will give you this little extra button up here, and you can search between, or you can switch between a bunch of different modes. Now I'm just going to change it to match any because this is a really useful mode here. So if I do match any and put a diamond pickaxe in there, it's going to export any diamond pickaxe regardless of its durability, which is really great because sometimes your system gets clogged up with blocks that take up one type. Because they're all different durabilities, and if you want to purge those out of your system, the fuzzy bus is a great way to do it. So you'd put in a diamond pickaxe here if you had a lot of diamond pickaxes for whatever reason, and then you'd have that exporting like to a garbage can, and you'd want it to have it to match any, so that no matter what the durability of any of your diamond pickaxes is in your system, it will export them all no matter what. And you can choose between the amount of durability left on the items right here. So if you want like the really damaged ones, you can split stuff like that. The fuzzy bus has a lot of different uses, and you can move stuff into your system, move stuff out of your system. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with enchanted items with this. A lot of versatility. This is a pretty complex card. We'll talk a little bit more about this right now when we talk about the view cell. With the view cell, you'll have to edit it again in the cell workbench. So I'm going to show you what I did here. I have two view cells. One of them has a fuzzy card in them that's matching any of these three items here, iron tools. And then I have an inverter card, which is basically saying that when I put this into a terminal, I do not want to see this. If I didn't have an inverter card, if I put this into my terminal, these are the only items that I would see. The next card I have here is an inverter card, which is basically going to blacklist these things from showing up inside of my terminal. So you can see here inside my system, I have a few different tools here, and I have two items that have durability on them. If I put this view cell in here, no matter if it has durability or not, the fuzzy card inside this view cell is going to make every single one of them disappear. So this is essentially blacklisting anything in there. The inverter card, which I didn't mention, basically will just change it to either blacklist from blacklist to whitelist or whitelist to blacklist. This card here, which I have set to dirt and cobblestone, has an inverter card in it, which is blacklisting me from seeing any of those two items inside my system. So I have a ton of these. I have a ton of dirt, 16,000. If I go ahead and put that in there, it just eliminates them from this specific terminal so I can't see them. The red terminal here has the cards in it. The green terminal does not. So you can see each one is individual, and you can customize each terminal based on what you want to see inside of your system. So it's maybe useful, maybe not, you decide. Next, we're going to talk about securing our terminal and wireless access, which is a really great quality of life improvement. In order to get wireless access, you're going to need a few different blocks. The first is the wireless access point. If you open up the wireless access point, you're going to have spaces in here to put additional wireless boosters. So you can see right now our range is 16 meters and it's using 16 RF per tick. If I add more of these boosters in here, it's going to significantly increase the energy usage, but it's going to allow me to access my network from very far away. Next, you'll need a wireless terminal or a wireless crafting terminal. I would highly recommend skipping the regular one and going right to crafting. Next, we're going to need a security terminal. Take your wireless crafting terminal or grid, plop it right up here. It's going to kick it directly down, and then it's going to go from unlinked to linked. And now, provided it has power, I'm going to have wireless access, depending on the range set in my access point, to my network. The wireless terminal won't consume energy if it's just sitting in your inventory, but if you insert and withdraw items from your network, it's going to use energy based on how much you're taking in and out. So you can throw this right in a charger here, grab it out, and now you have access wirelessly to all your stuff, and you can put in some energy cards in here so that it will last a lot longer. If you can't claim your territory with a mod like FTP chunks or something like that, and you want to lock down your network, craft a biometric card And then if you want to change permissions for certain players on the server, you can go ahead and right click on that player in the world with the card, and it will set the card to their username. I cannot put my own username in the system because it's my network, but this is where the cards would go. Once you have the card, you can put it right in here, and then you can select various different options about what they're allowed to do. Great. Level emitters are a great way to manage inventory levels inside of your network. What they do is they are set to meet a certain threshold, and once they're either above or below that threshold, they will emit a redstone signal, which will indicate to like an import or export bus what to do, provided that you have redstone cards inside of them. So in a really simple explanation for how level emitters work, if I go ahead and right click this one here, which as you can see is emitting a redstone signal and it's on, I have this one set to emit when levels are below limit. So the limit is what you set right here. The item limit that it's looking for is over here, and you have to add this yourself. So if I want to do wrenches, I would just put a wrench in over there. But right now this one's going to say that if I'm below 100, it's going to emit a signal. As you can see, I only have 98. If I was to go ahead and kick that limit above 100, the level emitter turns off. And that's pretty much how they work. Now that is not a good practical use for the level emitter, so I've set one up for you. Over here, I have a bonsai pot growing trees, which is great. They're getting imported into the system, and I'm getting logs and sticks and a bunch of other things. So I have 99 oak logs, and I have 50 glass. Now, I'm never going to have more than 99 oak logs because I'm using level emitters in conjunction with export buses to export oak logs anytime I get above 99. So this top row is an example of how I'm keeping the levels in check here. I have a level emitter set up to emit when levels are above or equal to what I have set here. So I have this set to 100 and I have it set to oak log. So if I have more than 100 oak logs in my system, it's going to emit a redstone signal, which is pointed at this export bus right here. So it's really important that this export bus has a redstone card in here, because if it didn't, it would just shove out oak logs willy-nilly, right? So we need to activate with a signal, which is being provided by this level emitter here. And once we go above 100 logs, it's going to export the log into a furnace, which is going to turn it into coal, which I'm importing back into the system. So I only ever have 99 logs in here, but any of the excess is going to get turned into charcoal, which is really nice. Down below, I'm using level emitter for a different purpose. I have this set up to emit when levels are below 40, right? And I have it set to glass. So whenever I have less than 40 glass, this is going to light up. And it's pointed at this export bus, and it's going to export sand. Again, you need a redstone card, active with signal, and it's going to export sand when I'm below 40 glass inside of this iron furnace here. So you can see if I take this out, it's all of a sudden going to export some sand out into here. It's going to burn it up. And then once I've reached my 50 threshold, it's going to stop exporting sand. So this just makes sure I'm always at 50 glass or 40 glass or above. And the reason why there's a little bit more than that is because the export bus is a little bit faster than the furnace. So there's going to be a little bit excess inside of here. So you just want to mind that when you're setting these things up. You might export a little bit too much here and there. Sometimes you definitely don't want to set up acceleration cards inside of your export buses, just because too much gets wasted. But this is a really simple explanation of how level emitters work. The energy level emitter works in much the same way. It just monitors the amount of energy inside of your system, and you can set thresholds to be above or below the limit that you set here. So for this example, I have it set so that when it's not daytime and my solar panels aren't generating power, once it goes below a certain threshold of internal power, it will activate this redstone port on my bigger reactor here, and it will use this for power during the night. If you don't want to use torches to light up your base, you can always use illuminated panels. They come in bright, regular, and dark. They all give off the same amount of light, they just look a little bit different, and they come in different colors. Also, great thing about these is they don't use channels, so you can slap them everywhere, throw facades on them, and they look very nice. Just want to mention two blocks really quickly, the ME storage monitor and the ME conversion monitor. In order to use these, they will require a channel and they will require power. So just slap them onto a cable and then add in the item that you want to see how much is inside of your system. So we have 63 emeralds inside of our system, 64 redstone, and so on. If you accidentally write this with an empty hand, it will clear it out. So if you want to lock it so you can't do that, just shift right click and it will lock it. Now I can't put anything in. I unlock it, put in the emerald, lock it again. Now it's stuck in there and it won't go away. The conversion monitor is almost the same, except you can pull items in and out of it. So it works in the same way. It takes up a channel, it takes power. You can put an item in there. I'm going to show you how many that you have inside of your system. So 579. Now I'm going to lock it by shift right clicking, and then I can go ahead and just right click and it will add items directly into my network. Left clicking will take them out. Shift left clicking will take one out at a time. Storage monitors actually don't use channels, they used to. Next, we're going to talk about interfaces. And interfaces have a lot of different uses, but I'm just going to show you 3 different examples of how to use this block, and then you can use your imagination from there. One of the things that you can do with the interface is you can stock certain items. So if you go ahead and drop an item in here, you can set the stock amount to whatever it is that you want here. You can also set the priority on this. So if you want this interface to receive certain items first, you want to make the priority on this higher than any of the other things that those items could possibly get sent to. In my opinion, probably the best uses of interfaces are to save channels on your network and allow interfaces to either push items or accept items from a bunch of different locations. In this example, I have a whole bunch of different redstone furnaces all set up in my system, and I'm putting them into my little chest to process the ores to go into my system. And instead of attaching an import bus to every single one of these and wasting a lot of channels, what I have here is an item pipe going directly into the interface, which will accept anything that's shoved into it, and it will eliminate the need for all those extra channels. If you put an interface inside of a crafting grid, it will allow you to use a multi-part interface instead of a full block. And they work exactly the same, but just take up less space. In this example, I have this interface stocking items, for in this case sand, inside of here, and I have this pipe pulling them out of my system. So if I go ahead and put sand inside of here, it is going to very quickly get sucked out through my interface and into this chest. Now in that example, I only had one piece of sand here, but what if I was to put 64? Let's see how fast this exits from the system now. Gone. Everything went in here really quickly. So this is a great way to get stuff out of your system, again, without using channels. In this example, I've surrounded an ME interface with a bunch of different redstone furnaces, which are smelting ores. And I have it set to auto output, and they're being output on the various different sides directly into this interface, and it's going right into the system. Similarly, I could set this to export, stock a bunch of items, and any block that can automatically pull from adjacent inventories would pull right from the interface, and I could have them smelted that way. Before I show you the last use for interfaces, we have to talk about the storage bus. This device can be placed on an absolute myriad of different blocks, and basically what it does is it recognizes the contents of the inventory that it's attached to as being part of your network. You can see here that I have no drive storage on my network at all. However, I have 2 stacks of sand somewhere. That's because the storage bus over here is attached to a chest, and I have my 2 stacks of sand. If I go ahead and pull them out, you can see that they've disappeared from my network. So it's just recognizing the contents of the block that it's attached to, and you can have access to it directly through a terminal. There's a bunch of different options over here, and I'm not going to go over them all, but one of the really important ones is having it set to bidirectional, extract only, or insert only. Bidirectional is usually the most useful, so in this case I have it set to bidirectional. I have sand in here, and I have it set to priority 1. This storage bus on this side is just set to priority 0. Right? And there's no whitelist. So this one I have whitelist as a sand, and that one has no whitelist at all. Which means if I go ahead and put sand in here, it's going to go to the highest priority device first, meaning it's going to end up in this chest. And since this one's whitelisted and that one's not, anything else I go ahead and put in here is automatically going to be put into this one because there is no whitelist filter set to the storage bus. One of the most common uses of the storage bus is attaching it to a storage controller with many drawers on it at the start of your game, because it allows you to see everything that's in all of your drawers, even while having very little to no storage space on your drive. You can also place storage buses on items that contain liquids, and even with no liquid cells inside of your system, it will still recognize that that is available. Now, what this essentially is here is a subnetwork, which we're not going to be going into any detail at all about here. You can check out subnetworking in episode 4. But what's going on here is I have a storage bus attached to an ME interface on 2 separate networks. So the red network here has the storage bus and it's slapped onto the blue network, right, which is containing the interface. And what this does is it allows the red network to see every single item inside of the blue network. So you can see here, one of the defining features is that I have 1088 orange wool inside the red network. But if I look at the blue network, that can't see any of the wool at all because there's actually only a few items on the red network and the majority of them are on the blue network over here. So the blue network can't see what's on the red network, but the red network, because it has the storage bus attached to the interface, can see everything that's on the blue network. If you wanted both networks to be able to see the contents of each other, you could attach another system only in reverse. So the blue network has a storage bus attached to an interface that's on the red network. However, I don't think I can recommend this because depending on what network you insert items onto, it might get confused as to where they're going. So I'm not sure if you'd have any way of knowing where like this tank went, like which storage cell. It did go on this one, but you might end up getting some stuff mixed up, so I wouldn't recommend that. But this is just to illustrate that you can do some really powerful subnetting with the interface storage bus combination. Hang in there, we're almost done. The Entropy Manipulator is used to smelt or freeze items, and if you mouse over it and check your recipes here, it will tell you what you can do and how much each operation will cost you. So for instance, if I was to shift right click on water, which is freeze mode, shift is freeze mode, it will turn into ice. If I shift freeze mode lava, it turns into obsidian. If I regular click, it will smelt that into an iron ingot, and I can also smelt a whole bunch of other stuff. Kind of a neat little tool. The charged staff is a really garbage weapon, don't bother making it. The color applicator is a really useful item to have around. What you're going to do is you're going to craft this baby, put it inside of your drive or an ME chest, maybe it's only an ME chest actually, and it will act as a storage cell of sorts, which you can put in paintballs. And once you have those paintballs in there, you will be able to color different types of cable without having to craft them individually. So I have all this stuff stored. I'm going to take it out of my ME chest. It's set to green. You can mouse wheel through, shift mouse wheel through, and it will change the different colors, and you can go ahead and make stuff different colors, just like this. Nice. And finally, the very last items we are going to talk about are the Annihilation and Formation planes. The Formation plane is probably the most difficult one of these to work with because of how it pushes items through the system. So you can set different priorities for this so that when stuff goes into your system, it's prioritized to the ME formation plane first. I think the easiest way to use these is just with an import bus on its own separate network. So again, our Quartz Fiber is only supplying power to the formation plane in the import bus. Technically, this is its own network. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull out of here, but since it has no space to store anything, it's going to go directly into the formation plane. And so when I put that in here, it's going to take that block that I have in that chest and place it in the world. The Annihilation plane and the Identity Annihilation plane will basically take whatever is in front of them and destroy it and bring it into your system, provided there's a valid inventory space for it. So the regular Annihilation plane, if I put this block down here, you see I have regular iron ore here and raw iron ore. If I take this and put it down, it's going to break it, and it's going to kind of smelt the block as if you were mining it. So I could put that here, and it's going to continually break them, and you see my raw iron is building up. The Identity Annihilation plane basically acts like kind of a silk touch. So when I put these down, it's taking the entire block as is, not manipulating it at all, and it's going into the system as raw as iron ore in this block form. Finally, in this setup here, I've combined some of the stuff that we've learned from episode 1, 2, and one block that we haven't learned about to create a machine that can automatically craft Fluix dust with the click of a button. I'll show you what it does and then I'll quickly explain how it all works together. So if I open up my green network here and I go ahead and craft 10 of these and hit next, start, they are going to go through this chest and out into this formation plane, down into here, and they're going to get charged up, and then they're going to get sucked up through this annihilation plane here. And basically, I've just auto-crafted Fluix dust. Now, the reason why this can all work is because of something that I didn't mention yet. Inside of the formation plane, there's an option that says blocks will be dropped as an item. So instead of trying to place this down in the world, which would just place a piece of redstone on the floor, it just throws them out of there and down into the water. I would highly recommend automating Fluix dust along with everything else you have to make in this pack, to be honest with you, because every time you need this stuff, you really don't want to be getting a bunch of stuff out of your system and throwing it in the water in order to grow it. You just want to be able to craft on demand. So this is how you set this up. I have 3 different networks. I have the green network, the red network, and the blue network. The green network is providing all of the power, and it's being transferred through Quartz Fiber here to the red network and here to the blue network. I programmed a pattern provider to know how to make Fluix dust. So it takes 1 nether quartz, a redstone dust, and a charged Certus quartz to make 2 Fluix dust. So I programmed that in here, and that is going to go inside here when I request a craft. Once it's there, it's going to get sucked out of the system and directly into the formation plane because the blue network has no storage. So it goes straight from here down to here, drops in the water, and then gets sucked up by the red network with this annihilation plane. The annihilation plane then takes the Fluix dust and puts it into this chest. And the reason it doesn't take all of the individual ingredients is because this storage bus here is formatted to whitelist only Fluix dust. So nothing else can pass through here and go into this chest. Once it's stored in the chest, I have it sucked out with an ME import bus. It comes out of there and back into my system, and the craft is finished. I know this was a long video, but I tried to cram in as much as I possibly could. This is a huge mod, there's a lot going on, so I had a lot to cover. In the next episode, we are going to be talking about auto crafting, which is an insanely powerful feature of AE2. If the content of this video was helpful to you, please consider hitting that subscribe button to get all the latest and greatest Minecraft tutorials, and hit that like button, and as always guys, stay poised.